Welcome to our Backyard Brothers podcast. It is the end of June, June 26th today, and NBA basketball is officially over, and it's starting again today. The NBA draft is going on right now, and so we're going to be reviewing the NBA, the whole NBA season, and at the same time commenting on when we get to the particular teams who have chosen in the first round, just kind of the moves that they've made. Previously, it was all in one day, but I guess they're splitting it this year. The first round is today, the second round is tomorrow. But in my experience, they've always done it in everything in one day. When did that change? Was it this year? Dustin, do you know?
I'm not sure when it changed. It is new. I don't know if it was last year or this year. I want to say last year that they did that as well.
Okay.
If I remember. All I remember is that, 10 years ago, Nikola Jokic was drafted during the middle of a Taco Bell commercial.
I remember that. Yep. Yep. Who knows who's going to be the guy this year? But
yeah.
So before we get to the NBA, we're going to talk about a memory and then review the Stanley Cup final as well. Technically, it's a biography. With the NBA draft going on, I wanted to look back on a player who kind of changed a lot of things in the NBA, how the NBA was, particularly the draft process in particular. Kevin Garnett, the big ticket, KG, the kid, whatever you want to call him at this point. He has a bunch of nicknames, the franchise even. Is a good one. Kevin Garnett in 1995 became the first player to be drafted directly out of high school since 1975, I think, when Moses Malone was taken in high school. And so it had been a long time since a player had been drafted directly out of high school. And there was a lot of discussion about, can this even happen? Is Kevin Garnett going to be successful going directly from that prep level all the way to the pros? He was taken with the 5th overall pick, which is pretty high for a guy coming directly out of high school, by the Minnesota Timberwolves. They immediately made him their franchise player, and they tried to build around him, and he helped the Timberwolves go to their first ever playoff appearance, I think 3 years later. And from there, they were a playoff mainstay. He helped them win their first playoff series in 2003. And then in 2004, he won the MVP, the league MVP. He averaged, I think, 25 points and 12 rebounds that year, along with about 3 or 4 blocks per game. He was easily the best player in the NBA at that year. Won the first round easily, beat the Nuggets in 5 games, I think, in that first round. And then that second round, they beat the Kings in 7 games. Western Conference Finals. In the first game, they lose their other all-star, Sam Cassell. And so Kevin Garnett has to do it by himself. They end up losing to the Lakers in 6 games. So Kevin Garnett eventually goes to the Celtics, wins a title his first year there. His only title that he ever won with the Celtics, and then spent a few years with the Celtics, went to the Nets, and then went back to the Timberwolves to retire. He spent the last 2 years of his career back in Minnesota, and he retired after 21 seasons in the NBA. So a couple of other numbers. Kevin Garnett had 13 years where he was on an all-NBA team. He had 14 years where he was on an all-defense team. He won a Defensive Player of the Year. He won 4 straight rebounding titles, 4 straight. And 5 years after he retired, he was an immediate Hall of Famer. So there's a lot of other things about Kevin Garnett, but those are just a couple of quick highlights and numbers. So let's talk about Kevin Garnett. Whoever wants to start after me, just jump in and talk about KG.
Yeah, I felt like this memory was for me, man. KG is like easily one of my favorite players. You can't put him up there like with GOAT status because of championships and other things that like you factor in. Like there's guys that just had more success. I think a lot of that was due to injury with KG. But I just love that guy's style of play. his overall personality, tenacity, ferociousness on the court, the way that his ability to mix power and finesse was really unseen at that time. And as young as he was, to be as dominant as he was, is just all the more impressive. He wasn't able to put things together at a team level every single year, with like a lot of other guys were able to do to get all those championships that they have over him. But on a singular level, as a player, I don't think there's many people that I would put over him at the power forward position. There are a few like all-timers, but for the most part, he's easily one of my favorite players. I think it was 2008 that he beat the Lakers, right, to get that championship that he did win. And so that was cool. That series was good, and he dominated Pau Gasol. I was watching the highlights of that series, and he was just all over those guys, the putbacks that he would get. And it's just rare to see a guy that can do it all at such a high level. I mean, a big guy with a jump shot as pretty as his is super rare, on top of the fact that he plays some of the really great defense. I mean, you're going to get blocks out of him. He's going to get rebounds for you. And so just a great pick for the bio, Scott. And in my opinion, he's one of the best power forwards to play the game. I know there's an argument for other people, but he's one of my favorites. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think anyone argues. I think everyone says he's one of the best power forwards to ever play the game. Yeah. Dustin, Cody?
Yeah, no argument for me on his ranking up there being one of the greatest of those things. But it's also incredible. I mean, like you said, drafted straight out of high school, right? 18, 19 years old, and he hadn't finished growing, right? I forget what his height was when he was drafted, but it was closer to 6'8", and then at his peak when he was 6'11". I mean, he still had inches to grow and still was going to gain another 50 pounds before his peak. And he developed not only his body, but his style, and that he developed that jump shot, that he started as a rebounder and a rim runner, and that you watch his early highlights in Minnesota, and the only thing the guy could do was be super athletic and getting to the rim, till later on in his later years in Minnesota becoming a absolute deadly jump shooter, and then being great defender, and then in Boston being one of the greatest players of that time as well. And so fantastic in his development, and that he kept on learning and was not a immediate come in and make a development, but developed himself is what I meant all throughout his career, which is fantastic. A thing that as people look at him, learn what skills he developed. I think something that Yancey did not mention is Kevin Garnett is often regarded as the greatest trash talker in all of basketball. That he was mean. He was just mean, and he was just getting people's heads so much. Anybody that he was guarding, nothing was off limits, and he would just trash talk and get in people's heads and make people play bad. And so that's something that's important to mention, is when people talk about trash talking, he's usually one of the first ones that they mention.
I like that. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, he was drafted the year I was born. So it's been a while. Maybe I'm making you guys feel old. I don't know. But I was looking at his accolades and everything that he achieved. And honestly, in my opinion, the most special one is the fact that his number was retired by the Boston Celtics. I think that is one of the
But not by the Timberwolves.
And what?
But not by the Timberwolves.
Right.
Not by the Timberwolves. Yeah. So number 5 retired by the Boston Celtics, and that, I mean, anytime that someone's number is retired, for me, that's one of the greatest recognitions that can be given to a player. So I wanted to point that out, that he has his number retired. That's in my mind, that's just really high up there. Second, I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but growing up, we had 2 games that we would play on the computer. There was backyard football and backyard basketball. I played backyard basketball quite a bit, and I would always play as Kevin Garnett. Kevin Garnett was my guy to play as, and because he was he was the best one to play as that. And so that's honestly the first time I kind of started learning who Kevin Garnett was actually playing that game. I didn't care about watching basketball back then. And so I learned about Kevin Garnett through that game. And that would have been probably 2007, 2008, 2006, somewhere around there. So he'd been in for probably a decade or so, and it was just so much to achieve about halfway through his career. At that point, he'd already achieved so much. So great pick, Scott. He's regardless of the championships he's won, he is a GOAT.
Yeah. A couple of last things that I wanted to mention. Dustin, you mentioned his height. He's one of the only players that I know of that underestimated his height. He never wanted to be listed what he really was. 6'11" is his listed height. Most people think he was about 7'1", actually. And he didn't want to. He at the time, you're over 7 feet tall. You're pigeonholed as a center, and he didn't want to do that. He wanted to be a power forward, and so they said that late in his career he was 6 feet 11 inches barefoot, but in shoes he was 7'1". And so that's a big guy that didn't want to be listed where he was. I think, Dustin, you also mentioned trash talking, and the one that comes up in my head is when he told Carmelo Anthony, he told him that he was with Carmelo's wife and she tasted like Honey Nut Cheerios.
Yeah. That's a good drop, bro. That's a good drop. Can you imagine? I have to fist fight you, dog. I don't care if she doesn't taste like Cheerios. I'm fighting you, bro, off the jump. As soon as I hear that come out of your face, we have to fight in front of all these good people.
Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of other good examples, but that's one that I always laugh at. Those words. Anyway, okay. We're going to talk real quickly about the Stanley Cup Finals. The Florida Panthers won the first 3 games, and it looked like it was going to be over pretty quickly. Edmonton Oilers then won the next 3 games, setting it to Game 7. I think I've mentioned before, it has happened in the NHL playoffs that a team has recovered from a 3-0 deficit to win the series, but never in a Stanley Cup final. That had never happened before. And so Edmonton was trying to make history. They go 7 games, and and Florida pulls it out after losing 3 straight. They win Game 7 to capture that Stanley Cup. Again, they were battling all year to get back to the Stanley Cup final, and this time they got there and won it in 7 games over an Edmonton team that almost made history. So, anyone want to talk anything about that series? That kind of almost history?
Well, didn't Florida make history by coming back from down 3 to win? Or no?
Other way around.
Other way around. Yeah, Florida.
Well, I know they won the first 3, correct? But then they had to lose the next 3, putting them down 3 to win the next one. Or it doesn't count that way? It has to be a goose egg on the other side?
Yeah. This particular instance has happened before, where you go up 3-0 and the other team wins 3, and then no team has won 4 straight, but it has happened before where teams have forced Game 7s after being down 3-0, but no team has still won those 4 straight in a Stanley Cup final.
Okay, so that's what made it. Sorry, I was just confused about that. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah, I think as Edmonton, it's one of those things. Go into this offseason with your head held high. Like it absolutely sucks that you dropped 3 games in a row, and to go down 3-0, but then to adjust and win 3 games in a row is incredibly impressive. And winning that 4th game, the final game of the season, that's always the hardest thing to do. That's what every team wants to do, is win the last game of the season. And but to win 3 games in a row against a team that is this close to it, like going to the next season with your head held high and ready for your revenge.
Yeah, I agree with that, especially Dustin. I think it's really hard to win. I mean, it's really hard to win 3 straight, which both teams did there. But I think it's really hard to focus on that, because if you lose one more, it's just over. And so they won 3 in a row where it was sudden death each time. And so kudos to them. They holding their head up high. I think I was the only one who said Edmonton was going to win, and I think I said Edmonton in 7. So I got pretty close. I was hoping for that, but I remember when it was 3-0, I was just like trying to hide my face or something. But Edmonton played well, and they showed that they deserved to be in that championship win. At first, it didn't look like that.
Now you wonder if Edmonton's going to pull the Florida Panthers story. Now they want to get back to the finals and win it next year. So we'll keep our eyes on that. Okay, we're back into the NBA. We're going to talk about all 30 teams today, how their seasons went, if we consider it a success, a failure, and what one top thing that they should do in the offseason is. So we did this for the NFL, and we're doing it the same kind of way where we're really one or the other. We don't all need to be talking about both. Either we talk about their season success, or we talk about what they should do, just to try to move it along as quickly as we can. So we will do this in the way that we did the preview, the same teams in the same order. So that's the order that we're going in. Do you see the Chicago Bulls?
Yes,
We do.
And you can see here on the top left some of the numbers that they had, including their record and their postseason success and where they ranked. You can see they were 19th in offense, 21st in defense, kind of on the back end of both of those. But so I'll explain what the colors mean. There's a couple of different colors. Gray is all defense. And so Alex Caruso got on the all defensive team, and these were their starters for the season. And you can see what they averaged down on the bottom. DeMar DeRozan was their best scorer, but Kobe White really came into his own and played really well in reserve for what's his name, Lonzo Ball, who didn't play all season. But DeRozan, Vucevic, and White were their scorers, and Alex Caruso was an all defensive performer. Their bench here. The only ones to really call out, Zach LaVine got hurt halfway through the season, and Lonzo Ball didn't play all season because of an injury. So they lost 2 of their best players during the season, and Patrick Williams, Javonte Green played pretty well as well. This was their coaching staff. So we're going to go in an order. Let's start alphabetically with Cody, and then we'll just do our rotation. How did the Bulls do? What do you comment on what they should do? Things like that.
I'm trying to remember what I predicted they were going to do this, at the beginning of the season. Does anyone remember what I had said or what any of us has said about them?
I can pull that up. If we want to move to Dustin, maybe I can pull that up.
I mean, that's okay. I'm just curious on what it was, but I do see that they're under 500 as far as their wins go. I think that was probably. I'm trying to remember. I think I said that I didn't expect them to be powerful or a big, menace to everyone, but I expected them to be okay and good. So I think I was a little wrong. Because they were okay, but they were never great. It seems. As far as the offseason go, they just need to focus on getting their players healthy. But I'll leave it up to Dustin, especially, to be the expert on exactly what they need. That's all I know.
Yeah, I look at it. You look at their roster, like injuries are going to happen to every single team. And the Bulls are incredibly deep. They have a very great bench. They're very deep. And so even with these injuries, still did not have success. And so that, honestly, that tells me there's a coaching issue. And so if they're going to address something, I think it's a coaching issue. I'm not saying head coach, could be assistants, but I think there's a coaching change that needs to occur.
I'm up next, and yeah, Billy Donovan has struggled as the head coach of the Bulls, and I don't know if he's going to survive the offseason. So far, it seems like he will, but you can almost give him a pass for missing both Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball for the majority of the season and the whole season for Lonzo's case. I've heard that Lonzo may be healthy for next year. That he's trying to get back, and everything looks good for him to be ready for next year. And I think if they stay together, and there's been talk about some trades with DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine, but they could reset if they lose all of those guys. So to me, it really depends what they're wanting to do. Are they wanting to try to bring everyone back? And if they can, if they're all healthy, I think this team can compete. But if they're going to trade off all their pieces, it's a full rebuild. And like you, Dustin, I think they should start from the top with Billy Donovan.
So P. Giddy, the diddler, is over there in Chicago now. Good luck to him surviving that crowd. He got traded for Caruso.
Right,
so
Caruso's
they no
gone.
longer have their best defensive piece. I think that's a coaching mistake to do that trade. I think that Caruso being there, being liked, gaining traction, getting defense, like helping you on defense, and just being a good plug-in role player. I think that was a mistake to send that to Phoenix for Josh Giddey. I just don't
Oklahoma
see
City. OKC.
Yeah, Oklahoma City. And I just don't see that panning out well for Chicago. I think that trade does help OKC out quite a bit. I think he's a good addition to an already good roster there. But overall, I think, coaching is an issue there. Player-wise, without injuries, that's a good team. And I kind of don't mind that roster if they could put it together, but they haven't so far, and that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, there's a handful of guys that I always say, like, we're watching a basketball game, I'll elbow Jazz and be like, oh, this guy is absolutely one of my favorite players to watch because he's so good at this. And Caruso is one of them. And so I'm excited to watch him on the Thunder. You know, usually when I do that, Jazz is like, cool, you know, but that's I love watching Caruso.
Okay.
So I'm like that with MMA. I'll have my wife watch, and I'm like, look, he needs to do this. I'm like trying to put her in an arm bar. She's like, no, stop showing me. I don't care.
Okay, Cleveland Cavaliers, 48 wins this year. They won the first round and then lost to Celtics in 5. They were third and second in 2-point percentage allowed and 6th in defense. Last year they were number 1 in defense. So you can say 6th in defense is good, but they fell 5 spots this year. Pink means an all-star. Donovan Mitchell was an all-star this year. Arguably his best season of his career, whether in Utah or Cleveland. 27 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Darius Garland was equally good, 18 points, 7 assists per game. And Jared Allen averaged double-double. Evan Mobley was a great defender as well. I mean, those 4 were great. Max Strus didn't do as good as he did in Miami the previous year, but he helped enough to get that team some wins. That's a pretty good starting 5. The bench, Karis LeVert is one of the best bench players coming off. He averaged 14 points off the bench there. And George Niang as well, and Sam Merrill was an excellent 3-point shooter. JB Bickerstaff was fired after the season, though. So he won't be returning. And I thought that they just hired somebody, but was it Atkinson from Golden State? Was that who Cleveland hired, or was that somebody else that hired him?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen that news yet.
Okay, yeah. Bickerstaff is gone, and someone has taken his place. Anyway, that's the Cavaliers. Starting with you, Dustin.
Just kind of talking season in review. They had an absolutely fantastic season. You know, ended up in 4th seed, which they could have been higher. But I think some late season injuries, especially with Jared Allen, really hurt them later in the season. So I think they had an absolutely fantastic season, and I'm sad to see the coach go because I thought it was a great team and a great season, and if they can run it back healthy, I have no issues with how far they can go.
Yeah, I think I was predicting, and I've opened it up, and we'll look at it at the end here. But I think I predicted Cleveland to go either all the way to the NBA Finals or just to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. And obviously, health played a big part in that. And you run into a Celtics team that's the best team in the NBA, and you win a game, and that's the best any team could do in these playoffs is win one game against the Celtics. So. you don't know what's going to happen now that a new coach is there, if they're just going to kind of rebuild according to the new coach's style, or if he's going to try and pick up the pieces of what this team already has in place. It's difficult there. You win 48 games and get fourth seed, you shouldn't be fired in the NBA, but that's the way the NBA is going, is essentially if you don't win the championship, you're in risk of losing your job. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think especially right at the 5 years is kind of baby steps when you're trying to put a championship team together. So I think that's unfortunate that they were able to get that deep into the playoffs, not have the success they wanted, and then he gets booted. I agree with you guys on that. That maybe a couple more years would have actually been really good for that team to keep the same staff in place to kind of develop that. As far as like overall, I don't have a lot that I can say I would want to add to this squad. I think it's a good squad that's giving you what you need out of them. I think it's a shaky choice to replace the head coach so soon, even though it's 5 years. But I think they'll have success next year, get into the playoffs, but I don't know that I see them as a championship team yet, since we're making these moves of getting rid of the head coach, and we got to see who they put in place and how he's going to adjust to that team overall.
I think just the only thing I need to add is just an observation that because of the injuries in the playoffs, it was really just everything was riding on Donovan. And you can't just have one player do it all. And that's unfortunately why they didn't go very far, because those injuries and putting everything on Donovan, McNabb, Donovan Mitchell, and just expecting him to carry the team, which he was their best player, but like I said, one player can't do it all.
Well, he was even out for the last 2 games of that series too, so they didn't even have their best player. Also, I want to see Donovan McNabb play in the NBA now. So.
Yeah, I said that.
So, okay. Detroit.
I just want to see those Campbell's commercials with his mom again.
Oh yeah, forgot. This were the worst record in the NBA. 14 wins all season long, and nothing. 27th in points, 26th in points allowed, 27th in offense, 26th in defense. Nothing good. The only thing that was good here, Cade Cunningham over there in point guard, was he's something to build on, and he's been good every year he's been in the NBA. Jalen Duren was pretty good as well at that center position, 14 points, 12 rebounds a game. And Jaden Ivey has been up and down, but he's really good when he's good, and he's just not consistent enough, and that's been a problem. Alsar Thompson has some good flashes, but that's just not a team yet. And in the depth, James Wiseman, he's officially a bust. Second overall pick a few years ago, and averaged 7 points and 5 rebounds this year for the Pistons, and that's not good enough for number 2 overall pick. Simone Fontecchio was good, 42% from 3, 15 points a game. So there are some pieces here if you can look hard enough, I guess. But unfortunately, Monty Williams was fired in his first season. You guys talked about that last week when I was gone. But that seems unfortunate to fire a guy after 1 year, even after the bad season that they had. But especially considering what Monty Williams has put on tape. So he's a good coach. Okay. Over to me. I pretty much just said what I thought, but I think this team has legitimate pieces in place to be a good basketball team, and they're, for whatever reason, they haven't done enough yet, and maybe that's what the front office is. They need to put a new coach in that can get more out of these players, because 14 wins that's not enough by even half. You need to win about 3 times that to have a good season in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm glad you see some good here. I say pray for Cade. Hope he gets traded somewhere where we can watch him shine. That's rough. To 14 wins, bro. 14 wins, bro. If I'm your coach, I'm giving the playoffs. You want to talk about playoffs? Speech off the rip. I can't stand losing that often. And that's just rough. It's hard to even think of where to start when you're that. It's like trying to teach a 6th grader how to play high school senior basketball with those kind of numbers. Not saying that that's the case. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, but I mean, the only thing I see there is Cade Cunningham as far as star power. I mean, and there are pieces there, but if you're going to blow that dude's tires out if you're making him do all the running, and I think that that's unfortunate. And if there's not a shift in that soon, and he's stuck on the same, uphill battle with a crap team, that we'll see a decline in his performances pretty quick. And that's just kind of my overall. I say blow it up and start anew, but that's just my Joker stance on it.
So is this just a young team? Are they all pretty young? Is that kind of what's going on here?
They're all young. I mean, they have some good bench players have been there for a while, like Evan Fournier and Taj Gibson, but their core is young.
So, I mean, in my opinion, is like we can't even adequately analyze this team because coach had one season here to try to fix what was already kind of a broken team, and then he also has a pretty young core. I mean, what do you expect? I mean, 14 wins is pretty bad, yeah, but give him 2 more years, and again, my belief is at least 3 seasons. What do you expect? I mean, he's going to do his best. You got to give him some time to work on it. Young team. I think I guess ownership probably is the one who makes the decisions there. I think ownership is out of their mind.
Yeah, good comments, Cody. I agree with that. I think as the ownership group, they're probably looking at him, throwing papers in the air, but like, how do we suck at sucking? Like, because how do we suck at sucking? Because for like 5 years straight, they've been like a bottom 5 team and can't even get like the top 3 picks. They're always just lucking out at the lottery. They suck at sucking. So I feel that way.
Flint still don't have water. Detroit will not have a championship until that happens. That's my call.
Okay, Indiana Pacers. They went far in the Eastern Conference. They went all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. They were able to beat the Bucks and the Knicks, who each had some injury issues before getting swept by the Celtics. But number 1 in points per game, 123.3 per game. Number 1 in assists. Number 1 in field goal percentage. Number 2 in overall offense. This was a great offensive team. Defensively is a different story. 27th in points allowed, 24th in overall defense. Obviously, you can see what needs to be worked on. But Tyrese Halliburton, the yellow gold is all pro, all NBA, like the top of the line. And Tyrese Halliburton led the league in assists. So he was fantastic. Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam came over and averaged even more points than Halliburton, and he re-signed for a massive extension, and so he'll be there for the next few years as well. So those two, the core, Miles Turner helping as well. This is also a very deep team that you don't realize it until you watch them play. Benedict Mathurin was even out for the whole playoffs. He averaged 14.5 points until that point, and he wasn't even playing in the playoffs because he got injured for the rest of the year. Obi Toppin was great. Jalen Smith, T.J. McConnell, Isaiah Jackson. I mean, this is a deep team as well. Rick Carlisle has proven everywhere he's gone that he's a great coach, and he's got this team competing at a high level at this point. So over to you, Yancey.
Yeah, I mean, pointing out the numbers and everything, we just need to make these boys play defense and we'll be good. Just right that ship on defense. I don't know if it's a mindset on the team or if that's the players individually struggling. That scene with those low of ratings and it being so diametrically opposed, I would say that that's coaching. Because it's how do you get 5 guys, 6 guys, 7 guys that can't play defense with numbers like that? So I think that that's a coaching thing. You need to focus yourself on teaching these guys better defense, and then everything else falls into place, I think, because you do have the guys there. Keeping Siakam is a great decision overall from ownership to coaching. That's a good choice. And I think that this team has a pretty bright future for the next 3 to 4, for sure, if they make the right choices.
I think really what I would say is really kind of down the same alley as that, Yancey. The defense is what they need to work on this offseason. I was looking at their stats. Looks like Tyrese Halliburton, who's their best player, had only, and this looks like a low number to me, 1.3 steals on average per game. That just seems like a low number, 1.3 steal per game. They need to be able to figure out how to get more takeaways in a game to be able to have, give their offense a chance to score more. Once they do that, they're going to be scoring out the wazoo, and the defense doesn't have to worry as much. So I'm just focusing on the steals and takeaways. I think they need to work on that.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what's already been said, so that's good. I have nothing more to add on what these guys have already said. I agree completely.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add, Cody, the steals leader in the NBA was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He averaged 2 per game. So that's
so low.
So 1.3 is fairly good. It's but because 2 is the NBA lead. But yeah, I agree with everyone else that they need to find a player that can really spark defense on this team and bring that culture into the rest of the organization.
And Pascal Siakam, who they brought in, 2/3 of the way around the All-Star break, could be that guy. He's a decent defender. I just don't think he had time to mesh with the guys and create that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah. Last team in the Central Division is the Milwaukee Bucks. They won 49 games, which means they finished first in this division, 4th in points per game, 6th in offense, not the greatest on defense. Obviously, Giannis Antetokounmpo was an all-NBA player. Damian Lillard was an all-star. So you have 2 really good players. And then you get to the playoffs, and Giannis is out for the entire playoffs. He had a hamstring issue. He didn't play. Damian Lillard was out for at least 2 of those games in the playoffs, too. And so their 2 best players don't even play. Who knows what this team could have done if they were healthy. They probably win that first-round series, but you don't know. This was a really good team. Chris Middleton was still kind of coming back from injury, it seems like. He should average more than that, but Brook Lopez, a great defender, averaging 2 blocks per game. On the bench, they also have good players. Bobby Portis was great, 14 points and 41% from 3. Patrick Beverley is that defensive tone setter that the Pacers need, that kind of player. Doc Rivers was in his technically first half of the season since he was hired halfway through the year. We've all talked about him in length, but he hasn't been fired. So I guess he's still there. So let's take it away. Cody, back to you.
So I guess first thing, I'm going to guess that this Thanasis Anton, whatever his last name is that his brother?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not related at all.
I was going to say he has to be with that.
Shut up, Dustin.
I thought his name was Giannis. But anyway.
They're both Greek.
No relation.
I still can't pronounce that last name, and I'm not going to try. So I think all I really have to say is just kind of simple and quick. I mean, this team had what they needed. They're a great team. But they just kind of ran into some bad luck with injuries in the playoffs. I think other than that, the only thing they need to work on in the offseason, other than getting healthy, is working on some defense. Figure out how to play better defense and get back at it next year.
It's interesting. They brought in, Hall of Famer Damian Lillard, but they didn't really elevate over previous seasons. They ended up with a pretty similar record, pretty similar standing, and then, of course, the injuries. And you mentioned Chris Middleton struggled a little bit, and so I think that they struggled to figure that out. Figure out having to play with a scorer-heavy point guard in Chris Middleton. What is he going to do with that? And they had a hard time figuring that out, and for that, they really didn't elevate themselves above previous seasons, despite bringing in a Hall of Famer to help. And so I think that they need to take a deep look in the offseason. I'm not saying change roster. I'm saying they need to work on strategy and talk, and just like, we or anybody else does talk in 2K. It's like, okay, if you're going to play this type of ball, I need to do this or that or this or that. And they need to figure that out over the season to be better next season.
Great comment. Yeah. I don't think I have anything to add to either one of you. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys did kind of cover it. You made it tough. I think keeping Giannis healthy, I mean, it's tough to stay healthy in a sport, right? Like we all know that that's tough, but it is important. And so, whatever you need to do. And then with Dame, how long do you guys think we have out of Dame left? Maybe 4 years?
Uh,
If
he's
that, yeah.
he's early to mid 30s, and with all of the great health technology and all of that, it's not uncommon for great players to play until they're 40. We've been seeing that more and more. So he could have 5 or 6 more years, but it could also be 2 or 3. I would say no less than 2, but no more than 6.
And so,
Okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
Yeah.
knowing that he's getting up there in age, I think that gives you some struggles in the next 2 or 3 off seasons with what you do, deciding if it's time to shift Dame out and get a new star role player in there to help out Giannis, or do you just try to ride it out with Dame until the wheels fall off? And that's all I would really add to that, is like that is a problem here in the next couple of years.
Okay, all of us need to shield our eyes here. This is what we picked. Look at those Pacers. So, for all three of us, me in particular, Yancey, you get the pass because you weren't here doing this NBA preview. I don't know. Maybe you can say, yeah, I had the Pacers number 2, or number 3, whatever they were. But yeah, so none of us expected the Pacers to play well. Also, to be fair to us, Pascal Siakam wasn't on the Pacers to begin the season. So there's that. So we were okay, with the exception of the Pacers. So now let me move over to the other one. Okay, we're over to the Southwest in the Western Conference, the Dallas Mavericks. This is the team that won the Western Conference. They beat the Timberwolves in 5 games in the Western Conference Finals, just to lose to the Celtics in 5 games in the NBA Finals. They were 10th in offense, 18th in defense. So there's some work to do there. Luka was the best scorer in the NBA, 34 points per game, along with 9 rebounds and 10 assists. He was very close to averaging a triple-double for the entire season. That's pretty fantastic for a player. I think, did he finish second in the NBA, or was he third, MVP, or was he third? I can't remember. Second, yeah. Runner up for the MVP award. Kyrie Irving, right next to him, had a throwback season. He was playing as good as he had played for the Cavaliers back in his day. He was playing excellent. And they brought over these 2 guys in the middle of the season, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, and they really, really helped, especially defensively, to get that team where they needed to go. Green is an all-rookie team, all-rookie player. Derek Lively started a lot of the season until they brought over Daniel Gafford. And so Lively was an excellent shot blocker, excellent. He scored 9 points, 7 rebounds a game. And they also had a lot of good help off the bench from Tim Hardaway, from Josh Green, Jaden Hardy. So pretty deep as well. Jason Kidd, say what you want about him as a coach, going from the Bucks and being fired, going to the Lakers as an assistant. But he's a heck of a coach, I think. Doing what he's done there in Dallas. So I think we're over to Dustin.
Yeah, looking at kind of season in review, I mentioned a little bit that Dallas kind of struggled. They looked like a mid-tier team through most of the season, right? They made some good changes to do that to help boost them through the playoffs, but they absolutely elevated themselves during the playoffs until they reached Boston, where I felt like they completely regressed back to how they were playing in December and January. And so they had a hot streak, but then that hot streak ended at a very unfortunate time. And so I think they need to look at themselves and talk about consistency. How do we play as consistently at our top level?
Nice comment. Yeah, I think what they've done though for the additions they made, the transactions they made to bring in PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, that changed a defensive mindset for the team completely middle of the season. And I think having a full season with that mindset, as long as they can continue those players where they are, continue that culture and mindset, I think that the Mavericks are set up to be a big force next season if that mindset continues through the offseason.
Yeah, so far I basically agree with you guys. I think that there's a good core here. I don't have any glaring problems with this team. I like the way that Jason Kidd coaches. And I think having a former NBA player as a coach just gives you a distinct advantage over other teams that don't have that, because there's a different level of chemistry that you can create between your coach and your players, because that coach has experience doing the thing you're doing. And I mean, as a kid, you might have watched him play basketball, looked up to him, and it's just different. And I think that they really have a good, strong structure there in Dallas that could continue on and lead them into playoff contention for the next few years. I don't see a lot that needs to change there other than, like Dustin said, stay the team you are, stay consistent, and play well on defense. And other than that, I think they got the right stuff there.
I'll comment on your coaching opinion when we get to the Lakers.
Fair enough. We ain't seen him yet.
I think the only thing I'll add is when one player is the leader of 4 out of your 5 categories, being, of course, Luka Doncic, he's one heck of a player. But we also commented on how, in the playoffs, how tired he was. Because it was all on him. And so it's amazing to think and know that how far they made it when everything is on him. It's amazing to, credit to him. But I think what they need to work on and figure out is how not to do that. How to have him as an integral piece, but how everyone is able to pitch in the same amount, spread the ball around a little more. And if they can figure that out during the offseason, then they're right back at it, like you guys said.
All right. Moving on to the Houston Rockets. I have a lot of comments. I'm glad I get to go first, but let me 41-41 this season, right at 500. They missed the playoffs by, I think, 1 or 2 games in the Western Conference. 20th in offense, 9th in defense. They were number 1 in three-point percentage allowed. They played excellent defense on the perimeter. This starting lineup was sneaky good. Fred VanVleet was as good as he had been coming over from the Raptors. Alperen Şengün, I think is how you pronounce his name, actually. Alperen Şengün was their leading scorer, as well as averaging 9.3 rebounds, 5 assists. Jabari Smith, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, all 5 in double figures, by the way, all 5 of the starting lineup. Amen Thompson was also very good, an all-rookie performer. Aaron Holiday, and they didn't get Steven Adams the whole season. He was injured from the beginning, and that could have helped a different mindset as well. Terry Eason was good too. Ime Udoka changed the culture immediately in his first season with the Rockets. Remember, he was fired from Boston because of how best to put it. Having an affair with a member of his staff. So he was fired from Boston, hired in Houston the very next, or not, he spent a year off and then he was hired by Houston. And so his first season there, he really did good. And because it's my turn to go first, I think even though the Rockets did not make the playoffs, this was a successful season in Houston. To get them to 41-41. Remember, this team had won, I think, an average of 19 games per year for the last 4 years. And they more than doubled last year's win total. This culture changed around immediately. They have the pieces in place. This is one of those times where you can point at a team that didn't even make the playoffs, didn't even make the play-in game, and say this was a successful season. And now it's time to build on that and make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, so why isn't Boban in does he just suck? 7'4"? What's up with that guy? Why is he not in the starting lineup? Is he injured?
No, he moved. I was gonna say he moves like he's stuck in mud the whole time. He's so slow.
Fair enough. That makes sense. I was just curious. I saw that, and I was like, man, what? You got a giant and you're wasting him? But that makes sense because if you don't have speed in this league, it's a killer. I think that I saw a lot of potential in the lineup, but I can't key in on any specific thing that this team needs to fix. I'm just not well versed enough in basketball to know the mid-tier, the middle of the road teams that well to know what I need to put in place to make them better or worse. And so this team kind of flies under my radar so far. Sengun is quite good from what I've seen out of him. And that I don't have a lot to talk about with the Rockets other than I see a good base there. But that's all I can really add to this.
I'm right there with you. I don't have anything to add. I'll leave it to the experts here.
Yeah, Scott, to kind of go off your comments, it reminds me of like the Thunder were 1 or 2 seasons ago. Super young core, lots of potential, but not realizing that potential. Then all of a sudden, boom, win the conference. And so I see them as a pre-Thunder team. They could be really good in 1, 2, 3 years at most, less than 3 years.
Okay, on to the Memphis the Memphis Grizzlies. They won 27 games last year, 30th out of 30 teams. By the way, worst scoring team in the league last year, 105 points a game. Worst offensive ranking in the league last year, 30th in offense, 12th in defense. So they were okay on defense. This starting lineup. This is not the 5 players they would want to throw out there, by the way. This is who ended up starting the most games. So, nothing looks good except for Desmond Bane. Desmond Bane, you want to be there. Everything else, Jaren Jackson. Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane, the 2 guys that you want to be there. Everyone else would barely get minutes if they had their way, and that's because Ja Morant. Remember, he had a 24-game suspension to start the year, something like that, and then he played 6 games and was lost for the rest of the year. So when he did play, 25 points, 5 rebounds, 8 assists per game. This guy is a star, but he didn't play any games really. Gigi Jackson was an all rookie performer, and that's someone to look at. Luke Kennard led the NBA in 3-point percentage, and so that's another one to look at. But this was a lost year from the beginning. Over to Yancey. Oh, sorry. I forgot the coaches. There you go. Taylor Jenkins in his 5th season. He's been great, except this year, again, kind of a lost season.
Is Derrick Rose injured or just not performing?
He's older. He's not the same kind of MVP he was 10 years ago. He plays well when he's on the court, but they're not giving him starters minutes. He plays 15 minutes a game.
What set Morant down? He get caught with a pistol or something?
What was his injury? Do you remember, Dustin? Shoulder? Or
I think it was like a shoulder or a neck or something. It was a multi-month.
What was the suspension? What was that about?
The suspension was his second offense with pulling out guns. So playing with guns.
Yeah,
nailed it. Anyway, so I think that's a rough go. Just buy legal guns, you idiot. What's the problem? Or don't point them at people that you're not shooting. I think that's rough, man, because that's your star of the team to lose him for suspension and then injury on top of that is super rough. I see players there that you can use if they're there and available to play, but I don't see a lot of success in the future for the Grizzlies unless something drastic happens in the next 3. They got 3 or 4 years to put it together, but I don't see that happening. I think this is going to be one of the bottom of the barrel teams. That's my prediction, is they're not going to have too much success in the next coming years.
I think I see a lot of success if John Morant can play. I think if John Morant can play and not be injured and not be stupid, then I think that they have a potential for a lot of success down the road. But it all starts with him. He's the star of the team. He's the face of the team, and he needs to figure out how to stay healthy, be healthy, and figure out how to be a good boy.
Yeah, with John Morant coming back, they're going to be able to have some shooters on the floor. But even with John Morant being as good as he is, I agree with Yancey that I don't see them finishing above the bottom third of the league. I think that they had a bright spark a couple years ago as a team. I don't see it happening again.
I'm kind of splitting this two ways because I do think this was the second best team in the league 2 years ago. They were number 2 in the Western Conference, and pretty much the same players that are on the team then are on the team now. And so obviously other teams have gotten better. I don't think this team is a number 2 in the Western Conference in a couple of years, but I think this is a playoff team next year if, like Cody said, they stay healthy and they stay out of trouble.
Those are big ifs, in my opinion. That's what puts them in the bottom of the barrel for me. Too big of ifs, especially when they've already shown you that one of them, they'll make the mistake.
Okay, New Orleans Pelicans. They won 49 games this year. That was good enough, by the way, to get 7th in the Western Conference. That's insane, by the way. You almost win 50 games, and you still have to go through a play-in game. They lost the first play-in game. They won the second. Then they got swept by Oklahoma City in the first round. 11th in offense, 7th in defense. Herbert Jones was an all-defensive performer. Zion Williamson finally stayed healthy all year until he was most needed. In the playoffs against the Lakers, or not against the Lakers, against the Thunder. He missed that whole series, but he stayed healthy the whole year, proved he could do it until it mattered most. And so that's a problem. CJ McCollum really struggled in the playoffs. He played pretty well, 42% from 3. I think he went like 19% in the playoffs from 3. So it was really, really bad. Brandon Ingram was inconsistent as well. And so you have these stars, 3 of whom averaged 20 points per game or more. And one of them was injured and 2 of them didn't show up. And so you worry about that. The Trey Murphy was excellent off the bench. Larry Nance is always a hustler. And then Willie Green in his 3rd season got this team to the playoffs. So hopefully that's something to look at. But over to Cody.
Yeah, I think this is kind of another middle of the pack kind of team that I don't have a lot of information on. So I actually was going to say something and I forgot what I was going to say. So I'm just going to pass it on to you guys. I'm not sure what even to say about them.
Yeah, Zion staying healthy all season was great, and it's all about trying to do it again. I think I've said it before, winning a championship requires so much luck. I mean, it's a long season, and, you look at these 2 teams that played in the championship with lucky they were with injuries, even with Porzingis being out, that was kind of the only major injury that both of these teams had. It requires a whole lot of luck in order to get to the end of the season with all your players available. And so got bad luck for the Pelicans and just got to try again.
Yeah, I think this team is set up for success, except it really concerns me when your 2 best players that are not injured don't show up at all in the postseason. Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, that neither one of them played well at all, either against the Lakers or against the Kings in the one they won, or against the Thunder in that first round. And so you really got to take a look at your players and say, are these the players I want to have? Even though they're averaging 40 points combined, they're not showing up if Zion's not the glue that holds them together. So that's something you got to think about. And I would not be surprised at all if the Pelicans swing a big trade this offseason involving Brandon Ingram to bring a younger star on the team. That would be my prediction and my hope what the Pelicans would do if I'm a Pelicans fan.
Yeah, I think I can echo, I mostly echo what you guys are saying, and I agree with you for the most part that look, there's a good base here, but if two of you aren't going to play when one of you is out, that's a big, 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 big problem, especially when you can play at such a high level when he's there, but then you can't when he's gone. That creates a way bigger problem than it's worth. I think that I agree. Ingram would get you a good name if you swap him out and trade him for somebody. And it might actually help with chemistry also. McCollum, I think, is the one I would want to keep there to run it with Zion. And that's yeah, I think that's a good assessment, and I pretty much agree with you. And I think that this team does have everything they need if Zion is healthy. But if he's not, it's a huge question. It's just up in the air at how they're going to play if Zion is gone, and that's rough. That's hard to deal with.
Okay, on to the San Antonio Spurs, the final team in the Southwest Division. Nothing really looked good. 27th in offense, 26th in defense. But they got a good look at who is their franchise player for the future. Victor Wembanyama, all defense and the rookie of the year. He averaged 21 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 4 blocks per game. At 7'4", he was fantastic. Dustin and I think all three of us actually, when we were talking about this preview team, we all said we didn't trust his slender frame. He's 7'4" and barely over 200 pounds. The guy's a pole, and so we worried about what it would look like. He proved us all wrong. He was fantastic all season long. And he's the franchise player that they're going to look at for the next few years. Devin Vassell has been excellent next to him. Depth leaves a little bit to be desired. Kelvin Johnson is good, but other than him, there's not a whole lot there. Kind of cupboards are bare. How long is Greg Popovich gonna coach? This was his 27th year coaching. Who knows how much longer he's going to go? He might go until he literally dies on the court, but. He just keeps on going, no matter how good or how bad this team is. But I think this team's trending upwards. Who's turn is it? Yes, Dustin.
I think it goes Dustin.
Yeah. To comment on Wemby, yeah, he had an absolutely fantastic season, and I stand mostly corrected in my prediction of him because he had an absolutely fantastic season. But you look at his numbers and then compare that to the team's numbers, and they don't align. How good he was on offense, yeah, this team was like 27, 28th in offense. How good he was on defense, one of the last in defense. And so his individual contributions were not team contributions. And I think that speaks chemistry with his teammates. When he gets a block shot, are his teammates there ready to grab the ball and push it down the court, create that turnover and turn it into points on the other side? When he gets an offensive rebound, are his teammates run into the corner for an open three? There's the chemistry there that needs to develop between those teammates. And, Popovich was great at that. All throughout the 2000s and 2010s. And so I think that he has the right coach to be able to do it. I think that there just needs to learn a lot of how do you take individual contribution and turn it into team contribution. That's what they need to work on because it did not work.
I was watching some Spurs games this year, just trying to. I was watching these teams that didn't make the playoffs, so I could be knowledgeable about them. And watching Victor Wembanyama play, he took a lot of threes, and he's not a great 3-point shooter. He would make some of them, but he's not a top 3-point shooter, maybe 30%. And that is not the game that you want to play when you're 7'4" and you're excellent down low. And so I think he still needs his game refined a little bit. He's proven that he's excellent. He's an excellent player. He just needs to understand where his strengths are, develop those strengths, maybe improve his game in other areas. Maybe he can become a 40% 3-point shooter, but it wasn't this year. It's about refining the game, and that's all of these players. That's the coaching staff. I think it's trending upward, but I still don't think it's a playoff team next year.
Yeah. Look, I say get Wemby in the weight room, put 30 pounds on him, and he'll be that's a contender. That guy becomes a whole different beast if you stick some meat on his frame and tell him, hey, stop shooting threes, go play defense, and you're gonna score way more off of good defense and then getting to the other side of the court than you're gonna chucking up threes and creating turnovers because he doesn't have a supporting cast there. So from my perspective, if I'm the coach there, I make Wemby a monster and I try to run everything through him as best I can until I get other guys in place. But ultimately, you got to get him somebody that he can pass the ball out to the 3-2 because you have to double that guy in some cases. He's 7'5". Like it's just dumb not to in some areas. And so I think carrying over what you guys were saying, once you get him to focus on defense and you plug a couple of guys in there to help facilitate with him, I think that team will be way better and Wemby's career will be much better. But if that doesn't happen, then I don't see this team entering the playoffs either. Like it just doesn't happen without defense. And you don't have anybody averaging over 20 other than Wemby, and that's tough. It's hard to get an offense going like that with those kind of numbers.
Yep. All I was going to say is I remember I was talking about Wemby at the beginning of the year, saying that he's going to get broken in half, that he's just not going to do well at all, and we all eat crow after that. And then the only other thing is just to add to you, Yancey. I mean, yeah, if I was his dietitian, I'd tell him to eat 5 pounds of brisket every day. That's what I would tell him.
That's Yancey approved diet right there, baby.
Charles Barkley would say, Wemby in San Antonio needs to have a churro in each hand. Because apparently that's what they do in San Antonio.
So this looks bad too. We're not looking good here. All three of us picked Grizzlies to win the division. They all finished they finished fourth, I think, or maybe even fifth. I can't remember now what it looked like, but so none of it looked really good. So what are we now? Let me stop sharing. So this took. I said initially at the very beginning of this that we're going to cover 30 teams. We got through 10. So we're going to have to cover the other 20 next week, meaning we're probably going to have to shut down the biography segment in order to hit all 20 of them next week. And we can also talk a little bit about the NBA draft as we do that. It's ongoing right now. The Hawks had the number 1 pick, and they took the Frenchman. What's his name? Brendan something with the number 1 overall pick. And so we'll talk about that a little bit next week. But we'll make sure to have our cache cleared so we can talk about 20 teams and get done with it next week and move on with the rest of our sports. So. If you guys can stay on for just a second after we stop recording, I'm going to stop recording now. And thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you next week.